Hello there, mother factors. You look lovely today. I am Sam, and today I'm here to talk about the world's most famous space organisation, synonymous with the cold, unforgiving recesses of space itself. Yes, it's NASA. But why was NASA created out of sheer panic? How did NASA produce its very own hit single? And why can't Pluto be a planet? Why? It was so close, the poor little purple boy. 2 out of 3 of those questions are going to be answered. So pretend to strap yourself in, make believe you're about to blast off into infinity and beyond, and prepare yourself for re-entry. This is 101 facts about NASA. Number 1. NASA is an independent agency of the executive branch of the United States federal government that deals with all things space-related. NASA runs the space program, as well as carrying out research into aeronautics and aerospace. I also hear the pizza in NASA's cafeterias are out of this world. Wow, yep, kicking off with those already. Number 2. NASA, by the way, stands for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, not Network for Awesome Space Adventures, as I'd previously hoped. Number 3. NASA was established by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1958 in a specifically civilian rather than military capacity, in order to encourage peaceful advances into space science rather than anything ultra-aggressive and galactic. Number 4. All the way back in 1965, NASA built a wind tunnel that could reach wind speeds of up to Mach 50, possibly making the world's largest, quickest, and most expensive hairdryer. Number 5. A little history lesson for you now. NASA's development was directly related to the pressures of national defense, as part of the heightened geopolitical tension of the Cold War. Following World War II, the USA and the Soviet Union emerged as the world's only superpowers, each of them with vastly differing political and ideological views. Throughout the decades that followed, the two nations battled for superiority in a range of arenas, one of which was space exploration. And it all kicked off with... Number 6. The launch of Sputnik and the space race, which sounds like a kid's cartoon, but actually isn't one at all. Turns out, putting a relatively small ball into orbit would be a huge game changer in the realm of space exploration. And when the Soviets managed to do it in 1957, the USA descended into widespread panic and worry surrounding the perceived deficit in technological prowess in the United States. Basically, they got scared that Russia was smarter than them. Known as the Sputnik crisis, this led to increased spending in basically everything to do with space and, ultimately, the creation of NASA. Number 7. NASA was formed from the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, NACA, which sounds like a bargain basement version of NASA, which had already been carrying out research for more than 40 years. Kinda stole your older brother NACA's thunder a bit there, didn't you, NASA? Number 8. With the launch of Sputnik, Russia took an early and definitive lead in the space race, and also claimed a number of other firsts, including the first unmanned lunar probe and the first person in space. In response, John F. Kennedy made the kind of alarming promise to get Americans on the moon before the end of the 60s. Number 9. The promise was made manifest in the Apollo program, which would ultimately span 11 years and cost $25.4 billion. They should really count themselves lucky it was only that amount. It's still not as much as a return ticket to Nottingham on National Rail. Number 10. The race to put a man on the moon, however, was not without tragedy. On January 27, 1967, 3 astronauts were tragically killed during the pre-launch testing for the Apollo 1 mission. Number 11. However, in October 1968, NASA celebrated the successful Apollo 7 mission, which orbited the planet without the aid of Google Earth, and proved the safety and efficiency of the redesigned Apollo Command Module. Number 12. However, as a result of a schedule the crew thought was too busy, their dissatisfaction with the food, and the fact that all 3 members of the crew got colds while in orbit, the Apollo 7 crew argued a lot with mission control. It got so bad, in fact, it was described as a near space mutiny. Yep, that's right, it was basically Jersey Shore in space. Number 13. While orbiting the moon, James A. Lovell Jr. accidentally erased some of the memory on the onboard computer. This was bad, not because it deleted some of the poetry he had written on it and some fresh memes he had designed, but because this made the computer think it was in the wrong position, making the thrusters fire all over the shop. This forced Lovell to have to calculate their actual position manually, using the position of the stars to properly align themselves. We've all been there. Number 14. Despite initial successes by the Russians in the space race, the Americans regained ground and then some when, on the 20th of June 1969, they successfully landed a manned spacecraft on the moon. No big deal, mic drop. Number 15. Neil Armstrong became the first person in the history of mankind to walk on the surface of the moon, which later led to an REM song, so well done him. 19 minutes and 1 second later, Buzz Aldrin joined him. It's kind of romantic when you think about it. Number 16. The famous words that Neil Armstrong said as he stepped onto the surface of the moon are often quoted as, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Hashtag inspirational. However, Armstrong states that he meant to, and in fact did say, "a man," not man, but the article "a" was obscured by static. Several investigations have attempted to prove definitively whether the "a" was indeed included. Number 17. Neil Armstrong's NASA application was late by a week. If it weren't for his hilariously named friend, Dick Day, and his efforts to secretly slip the application into the pile, he would have been rejected for being late. I think we all need a Dick Day in our lives. Wait. Number 18. During the Apollo 8 mission, the first manned mission to orbit the moon, the three-man crew read from the Book of Genesis and gave Christmas messages. This did not sit well with atheist activist Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who sued the US government on the grounds that they shouldn't be endorsing religion. Her suit was dismissed due to a lack of jurisdiction, by which I mean her lawsuit, of course. I'm sure the suit she was wearing was absolutely lovely. Number 19. Despite having her lawsuit dismissed, atheist activist Madalyn Murray O'Hair's response to the Apollo 8 Bible reading was enough to force Armstrong and Aldrin to take communion privately, while still inside the lunar module. There must have been chalice wine all over the space rug. Number 20. An estimated 600 million people watched the moon landing. Oh, wow, no pressure. No wonder Neil fluffed the line. Number 21. Buzz Aldrin was the first person to urinate on the moon while 600 million people watched. In a weird way, that's actually more impressive than walking on the moon. Number 22. They stayed for a total of about 21.5 hours on the lunar surface. Just a day out on the moon. Mind you, I suppose you wouldn't want to leave it since you took so much effort to get there. It's a bit like Thorpe Park in that way. Number 23. Much fuss is made about Armstrong and Aldrin's lunar excursion, but while they were happily scurrying around on the moon, the third member of the crew, Michael Collins, was orbiting the moon with no radio communication. Completely alone. However, Collins stated he never felt lonely and in fact felt exultation. Number 24. NASA quarantined the Apollo 11 crew members for 3 weeks after they returned, fearing they may have brought back an unknown lunar pathogen. Luckily they didn't, which prevented Spider-Man ever becoming Venom. Wait, what? What do you mean it's not real? Number 25. While on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin collected about 22 kilos of moon rocks, which, unfortunately, they did not get to flog on eBay. Number 26. Speaking of moon rocks, in 2002, a NASA intern called Thad Roberts was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison after stealing a number of moon rocks and having sex with his girlfriend on top of them. More than anything else, that must have really hurt. Ow. I guess their relationship was on rocky ground after that one. Number 27. The Apollo 11 mission effectively ended the space race. The period of competition wound down due to a number of factors. Financial and efficiency concerns, lack of political clout, and a number of significant mission failures on both the Russian and American sides. But also because, Apollo 11 landed on the frickin' moon, and how the hell are you going to top that, Russia? Number 28. That being said, there were another 5 moon landings completed by NASA after Apollo 11. These were Apollo 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17, totaling 6 manned missions to the moon. Number 29. You may have noticed that Apollo 13 was missing from that sequential list of manned moon missions. That's because Apollo 13 was supposed to land on the moon, but things went really, properly, terribly wrong when an oxygen tank exploded and left the crew with limited power and water. The lunar landing was aborted, but the crew were brought back safely to Earth. This was always going to go badly, really, what with the number it was given. Number 30. In case you weren't aware, a movie was made about Apollo 13 starring Thanks and some bacon. It currently has a score of 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I guess people like it, and it was worth it in the end. That's good. Number 31. In total, 12 people have walked on the surface of the moon, all of them NASA astronauts. Or nastronauts. Additionally, another 12 people have been to the moon but not actually landed on it. Again, all of these people were from NASA. Kinda obviously, really. Number 32. Despite undeniable evidence, there are some people who do, in fact, deny that anybody ever landed on the moon. Some people even claim that Stanley Kubrick admitted to helping NASA fake the moon landings. Surprise, he didn't. It would have been a nightmare-esque bit of footage if he had, though, right?
Number 33.
In 2006, NASA admitted that they actually accidentally recorded over the original tapes of the moon landing. Because apparently NASA is still your mum when it comes to VHS tapes. I bet some of you don't even remember VHS tapes, do you? Number 34. Bill Nye the Science Guy originally wanted to be an astronaut, but NASA kept rejecting him. Oh, why? Why? Who would deny Bill Nye the Science Guy? Who? Who? NASA, that's who. Number 35. In order to be officially considered an astronaut by NASA, you must travel at least 50 miles above the surface of the Earth. So, jumping really high and wetting yourself occasionally doesn't count. Sorry. Number 36. Following the conclusion of the Apollo program, the USA decided they wanted a base camp out there like an overenthusiastic Boy Scout with a lot of money, and so launched its first all-American space station known as Skylab. Number 37. Skylab's main purpose was to establish a long-term presence in space. Preceding missions had gotten humanity into space and back, but Skylab was about staying there. Number 38. Skylab is actually only the second space station after Russia's Salyut, another Russian first that is somewhat overshadowed by the Americans landing on the bloomin' moon. Number 39. Just to be safe, NASA built 2 flight-quality Skylabs. The backup is now on display at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., USA. It's not for sale, by the way, it's a fancy backyard shed. I tried already. Number 40. Skylab was launched on May the 14th, 1973. Very soon after liftoff, the station's meteoroid shield was severely damaged and one of the 2 solar panels was ripped off. Yikes. Number 41. As such, part of Skylab 1's mission involved repairing the damaged space station. This was done with a number of dramatic spacewalks. No, Clive, not moonwalks. Spacewalks. It's about space. The meaning of life. In 1974, the crew of the Skylab 4 mission, who were fed up with their heavy workload, turned off all communication and spent the day doing, well, nothing. Upon resuming contact with the ground crew, they were granted a reduced schedule and the freedom to complete tasks when they wanted to. It was like another space mutiny, guys. A literal space mutiny. Blimey, people sure get stroppy in space, eh? Number 43. NASA sent 2 spiders, beautifully named Anita and Arabella, into space with the Skylab 3 mission to see whether or not spiders could spin webs in space. And guess what? They smashed it. Spiders can spin webs in space. I'm not sure why they even bothered to test that, really, but hey, always knew you had it in you guys. Good work. Number 44. However, Skylab turned out to be less successful than NASA would have liked. Though NASA hoped that the station would orbit the Earth for around a decade, it lasted only from 1973 to 1979. Oh man, it didn't stay up for as long as you wanted it to. I think I might have some pills for that at home. Number 45. Adding insult to injury, when Skylab crashed into Australia upon re-entry, the Australian government fined NASA $400 for littering. I dream of reaching that level of pettiness. Number 46. After Skylab, there followed 2 joint US-Russian space programs known as Apollo-Soyuz and Shuttle-Mir. Together, these ran between 1975 and 1998. This was during a period of time when Russia and America were at least trying to be friends. Although some would say they're currently a bit too friendly. Number 47. Another of NASA's space programs was Constellation, which aimed to complete work on the International Space Station, return to the Moon, and finally send a manned crew to Mars. Wow, aim high, NASA. Number 48. Its logo reflects these aspirations, as does the name of its rocket boosters known as Ares, which is the Greek equivalent of the Roman god Mars. See what they did there? No, Clive, think. I meant the planet. Jeez. Number 49. Unfortunately, Constellation was shelved due to budget cuts. Thanks, Obama. No, actually, this time it was actually Obama's fault. He excluded the program from his 2011 budget, so... Number 50. Going back a bit to 1972, NASA began the first launches of a series of satellites as part of the Landsat program, created to systematically photograph the surface of the Earth from space. I wave at it every morning when leaving the house just to make sure I'm on it. Number 51. Between 1981 and 2011, NASA carried out 135 missions as part of its Space Shuttle program, 9 of which were part of the aforementioned joint Shuttle Mir venture with Russia. Working together. See, that's how to get things done. Number 52. Numerous accomplishments were achieved during the Space Shuttle era, including scientific and astronomical experiments, the construction of the ISS, and the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope, which, incidentally, was sent into space with a knackered mirror and so had to be fixed 3 years later. Number 53. Unlike the smaller Apollo-era space capsules, the Space Shuttle was built as the first reusable spacecraft. Instead of being blasted into space and then plopping back in the ocean, the Space Shuttle glides back to Earth and lands like a commercial aeroplane. Much more efficient and would probably get a better review on TripAdvisor. Number 54. The Space Shuttle zipped around Earth at an astonishing 17,500 miles per hour. This was so fast that the crew could view a sunrise or sunset every 45 minutes or so. Wow! Imagine all the Instagram photos you could take in a day! Hashtag doing it for the gram. Number 55. The first orbiter in the Space Shuttle program, the Enterprise, was going to be called the Constitution. But then Star Trek fans ran a successful write-in campaign to change the name. Number 56. The Enterprise was never intended to go into space and was built to investigate how orbiters would operate on Earth. It's now on display in New York. Poor Enterprise. Going where many men and women have gone before. New York. Number 57. Another 5 orbiters actually made it into space, namely the Columbia, the Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour. Number 58. The total mileage of all 5 orbiters combined is 513.7 million miles. That's enough to get you to Jupiter, but not back. Oh hey, it might be like that film Passengers, and I'll be stuck up there with Jennifer Lawrence on a space shuttle for eternity? Where do I sign up? Number 59. The Space Shuttle Endeavour was built using spare parts salvaged from the Discovery and Atlantis shuttles, making the Endeavour essentially a Frankenstein spacecraft. Good premise for a movie. Number 60. The Space Shuttle's heat shield, boringly named the Thermal Protection System, contains more than 30,000 heat-resistant tiles. From peak temperature, the tiles can cool down fast enough to be held without protection only a minute later. Number 61. The heaviest Space Shuttle orbiter, the Columbia, weighed 178,000 pounds. This is roughly the weight of 13 African elephants. Blimey, lay off the Milky Way's Columbia. Oh, did I just fat shame a spaceship? Number 62. However, during its last orbiter major modification period, which is essentially an enormous MOT, Columbia had over 1,000 pounds of wiring and hardware that it no longer required removed. Looking good, Columbia. Am I now sexually attracted to a spaceship? Number 63. Between 1984 and 2011, the Discovery flew a grand total of 39 missions during its operational life. It was used in more space flights than any other spacecraft in the history of ever. Nintendo 64. IMAX cameras were taken onto the Atlantis to film Hubble, a documentary about the repair and upgrade of the Hubble telescope. Atlantis had quite the co-star, as Leonardo DiCaprio narrated the film. Atlantis got the part, even though Columbia lost all that weight. Number 65. Due to then NASA Administrator James Beggs being fearful of the unlucky 13 bad luck, the numbering system of the Space Shuttle missions were changed. The mission that would have been STS-11 became STS-41B, STS-12 became STS-41C, and STS-13, the scary number, became STS-41D. You'd think one of the heads of the world's most prominent scientific organizations wouldn't be so superstitious, but hey, there you go. Number 66. The first person to tweet in space was astronaut Michael J. Massimino, a crew member from the Space Shuttle Atlantis' STS-125 mission. On May the 11th, 2009, he tweeted that he was enjoying the magnificent views. Good lord, Mike, get back to work. Number 67. Unfortunately, the Space Shuttle program wasn't without tragedy. In 1973, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after liftoff, killing all 7 crew members on board. In 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated on its re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, again killing 7 crew members. Number 68. 3 of the Space Shuttle orbiters are now in museums around the United States. Atlantis is in Florida, Discovery is in Virginia, and Endeavour is in California. Number 69. In 1999, NASA lost a Mars probe because its altitude control system was using imperial measurements, but its navigation system was using metric, which is frankly a mistake I could imagine Mr. Bean making. It was therefore 100 kilometers too close to the red planet before attempting to enter orbit and burned up in the atmosphere. The probe cost $125 million. Awkward. Number 70. However, the Curiosity showed him how it's done when it entered Mars' atmosphere at 13,200 miles per hour, which is 17 times faster than the speed of sound, and landed perfectly. An ultra-fast entry. Reminds me of prom night. Number 71. Curiosity is equipped with an infrared laser gun, which is used to vaporize a small section of rock to study its chemical composition. It can do this from 23 feet away, making it about 50 times more accurate than your average stormtrooper. Number 72. Due to the unreliability of solar power, Curiosity carries with it an advanced onboard nuclear power system called, oh boy, this could be fun, the Multi-Mission Radioisotope Thermoelectric Generator. That will allow Curiosity to generate its own electricity for up to 14 years. Snazzy. Number 73. However, Curiosity wasn't the first successful Mars landing. The first Viking probe achieved that feat on the 20th of July 1976. A Soviet probe known as Mars 2 is technically the first probe to land on Mars. But it wasn't exactly successful, as it quite literally crashed into the red planet. Number 74. In 1997, 3 men from the Yemen sued NASA, claiming that they had inherited Mars from their ancestors from thousands of years ago, and that by landing on it, NASA were trespassing. The lawsuit didn't go anywhere. Shocker. Number 75. In a similarly brazen act of entitlement, a man named Gregory W. Namitz claimed to be the owner of the asteroid 433 Eros, upon which the spacecraft Shoemaker landed in 2001. His company, Orbital Development, issued NASA with a fine of $20 as a parking ticket. Some people. Number 76. NASA employs more than 18,000 people. That's a small army. A small, nerdy army. A small, nerdy, incredibly intelligent army who I probably shouldn't mock. Sorry, guys. Number 77. The Vehicle Assembly Building, where NASA has constructed some of its most famous spacecrafts, is the largest single-story building in the world by volume. And there you thought your Aunt Pat's bungalow was huge. Number 78. In fact, the Vehicle Assembly Building is so big that it has its own weather. If it weren't for one of the world's most massive air conditioning systems, the Florida humidity would cause rain clouds to form near the ceiling, which sounds amazing, if not impractical and a bit annoying. Number 79. The area code for the Kennedy Space Center and its surroundings is 321. Get it? 321? Like a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Funny. Number 80. Anyways, though the Kennedy Space Center may have a funny postcode, it also has the very serious task of being the launch site for every manned US spaceflight since 1968. Number 81. The location of Cape Canaveral is well placed, as it's generally sparsely populated, reducing the risk of your house being smashed or blown up in case of accidents. The fact that it's also right next to the Atlantic Ocean is also ideal in this regard. Number 82. Despite having not visited the moon since 1969, NASA plans to put humans on Mars by some point in the 2030s. Clock's ticking, guys. Number 83. Just in case life was found somewhere else in the universe and it ain't friendly, NASA actually has the Office of Planetary Protection. It plans to take prudent precautions in case we do encounter aliens who want to destroy us and turn Earth into an intergalactic shopping mall. Which, that's comforting to know, I think. Number 84. NASA has a service that will text you whenever the International Space Station passes over your location. Quite why, I don't have a clue, but it's kind of them, I guess. I might sign up. Maybe then I'll actually get some texts. Number 85. Around the World in 80 Days, Armageddon, and for some reason Apollo 13 are among the dozens and dozens of movies NASA keeps on board the International Space Station. So you really can just have a comfy night in on the ISS. Oh, do they have Guardians of the Galaxy? They do! Yippee! They actually do. Number 86. NASA employs people to smell everything they send into space. This fact may sound particularly silly, but the reality is that strong smells are made particularly unpleasant in warm, confined spaces, such as spacecraft. And you can't exactly crack a window. So important is the awareness of stank in space that in 1979, Russia abandoned a Soyuz mission because they couldn't figure out the source of a strange onboard smell. Number 87. Lonnie Johnson, who invented the Super Soaker in 1991, worked for NASA as a scientist. He also helped develop the Stealth Bomber. Stealth Bomber, Super Soaker, which is better? You decide in the comments. Go. Number 88. NASA also invented invisible braces. They're made from polycrystalline alumina, which is somehow used to track heat-seeking missiles, which is overkill for a bit of tooth wear, really. Number 89. According to polls, most Americans think that NASA takes up roughly 20% of the national budget. In actuality, NASA receives around 0.005 cents of every tax dollar. Oh, America. Number 90. Stanley Kubrick used lenses that were commissioned by NASA for use in the Apollo moon landings, on the actual moon by the way, not in a studio, to film scenes for his movie Barry Lyndon. These lenses were very fancy indeed, as they allowed him to film scenes that were only lit by candlelight. Number 91. NASA is funding research into a bidirectional flying wing aircraft. By using two sets of wings angled perpendicularly to each other, it can switch from sub to supersonic flight without creating incredibly loud sonic booms. Again, NASA, if you could invent that, that would be lovely for the commute. Thank you. Number 92. Though NASA has surmounted a plethora of enormous technical challenges, allowing us to land on the moon and orbit the Earth for months at a time, one of NASA's most consistent problems is, in fact, alligators. At the Kennedy Space Center, which I'll remind you is located in Florida, alligators regularly climb over fences and enter NASA facilities. Imagine surviving a trip into space and back, literally into the unknown and then back into the real fuzzy world again, only to meet your end by being eaten by an alligator at the Kennedy Space Center. I mean, you'd be gutted. Literally, I suppose. Number 93. In order to test Einstein's theory of relativity, NASA has made the most geometrically perfect sphere ever created. The highest bump or dent anywhere on the sphere is no more than 40 atoms high or deep. Round. Number 94. NASA is currently working on a Star Trek-style warp drive called an M drive, which allows super speedy travel by creating a warp bubble, which expands space behind the craft and compresses space in front of it. If they can get it to work, it could get astronauts to our second closest star, Alpha Centauri, in just 2 weeks. Number 95. NASA pays people $15,000 to lie in a bed 24 hours a day for 90 days, so they can measure the effects of zero gravity on a stationary but healthy person. What? I mean, yes please. Where do I sign up for that? And the Jennifer Lawrence thing. At the same time, preferably. Number 96. Each spacesuit, officially called an Extra Vehicle Mobility Unit, or EMU, costs NASA around $12 million. See, they missed a trick there. They could have bought lots of chicken nuggets for the same amount, so who's really winning here? Number 97. NASA is developing 3D printed pizzas for astronauts, which begs the question, what about 3D printed pizzas for not astronauts? Number 98. NASA actually has recorded a song produced by the Earth, which isn't the same, by the way, as Michael Jackson's Earth song. These are not regular acoustic sounds, but radio waves produced by the plasma waves in the Earth's radiation belts. Sounds kind of like a sped-up whale song, rather than... That's Earth song again. Number 99. One of NASA's less prestigious vehicles is the Astrovan, which is a modified 1983 Airstream Exceller motorhome used to ferry astronauts around. Apparently, astronauts love the historic status of the van so much that they've argued against upgrading it.
Number 100.
NASA has 3 official logos, the meatball, the worm, and the seal. The worm was retired years ago, but the seal and the meatball, which sounds like a very weird comedy act, are still going strong. Number 101! Lastly but not leastly, there's a rumour that NASA spent millions of dollars producing a space pen that works in zero gravity, while Soviet astronauts simply use pencils, but this is a big fat load of old rubbish, i.e. a lie. Aside from anything else, pencils can't be used in space due to fears that pencil fragments could break off and work their ways into the electronics. People are so gullible these days, like if I told them that an M-ball was coming up now. See, it did it. Gullible. Now though, here it comes. That was 101 facts about NASA, and I don't know about you, but I had a lovely time. It was out of this world. That was bad even for me. If you want to click subscribe right now, you'll get more videos exactly like this one. How exciting indeed. And hey, I'll see you guys on the moon colony when we eventually move there, because Earth is doomed. Oh.